Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Take the Initiative. Today we got Meta Report for April 2024. I've been trying to do these about once a month. And we've had quite a few shakeups over the past couple of weeks in April. But I think the fundamentals are still there. They're still competing. So I want to preface this before we really get into it. The point of this is not a tier list. I've organized things in a way that sort of could be construed as a tier list, but it's really not. That's not the intention. The intention is just to have here's like all the lists that are being played and that are competitive. I'm trying to balance like how good the deck actually is versus how much it's being played. And I'm really more favoring what's actually being played. So this can be a video for players that are just trying to get into the competitive scene and want to know what's out there. There will be lists for everything. I'm going to put multiple lists pretty much for every deck. Some of the lesser played ones, there's only going to be one in there. But they're all good starting points. And I want to get you to think about the different ways you can build the deck, not just take one list and go with it. But you can net deck from this, and it's a great resource if you want to do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's great, healthy part of competitive play. But yeah, so yeah, like I said, this is not a tier list. It's just a list of decks that are sort of organized. And yeah, the point is just listen to what I say about the deck, not necessarily where I place it. So yeah, so this is like what I call the old hotness. It's Boba, Sabine, and blue-green control decks with either Krennic or Iden. Myself and a lot of other competitive players are convinced that Iden is better, but we keep seeing a lot of tournaments where there's no Idens in the cut and there's like one Krennic. So Krennic's not dead yet, and his deck it functions very similar to Iden's. I do think Iden is the slightly better deck, but Krennic seems to be more favored by some people. And this control deck has actually sort of fallen out of favor over the past month since the last time we did it. I think back then, like people were playing a lot of Boba and Sabine, and the Iden deck has good matchups into both of those, so people were loving Iden, but now not as much, I guess. I still do think she beats both these decks, but there are other new things that have come into the meta that we'll talk about later. But let's give you the rundown on all these three decks before we get into the new stuff. So this is Boba. Most of you guys probably know like how he works. He's pretty much a mid-range deck. Yeah, good top end like Fett's Fire Spray Invader, and then good middle range units like Boba Fett. You're playing ramp cards usually, Resupply and Super Laser Technician. There's been some new technology that people have come up with, namely like Recruit and Gamorrean Guards, largely due to the KTOD people that have been working on this deck. So here are some of the lists. I have here Reflex's list, which got second place at the 5K, which is a 160-person event in Orlando, biggest tournament in the U.S. so far, one of the biggest in the world, if not the. I think there might have been a European tournament that was bigger than that, but this is a very, very big tournament, very competitive, large prize pool. And this is the second place list. It was Boba up in the corner, played by Reflex. And you can see like he's running the Recruit tech, he's running Gamorrean Guards, he's also running Cunnings in the main deck. That's not super common, but more and more people have been on it. He's not the only one that's playing it for certain. But you can see like in these three lists a lot of commonalities. So this is down the corner. This was Hippo's list from top 4 of the Take the Initiative League. It's our online league on Tabletop Simulator. And over here we have this deck, I believe, was from a British tournament. I think it won. It might have been top 4, but I'm pretty sure it won. And you can see, you know, there's all sorts of different variations. Like Hippo's main decking 1 Change of Heart. This guy over here is main decking 2 Reinforcement Walker. I think both these decks have Reinforcement Walker on the side. I think they all. This one doesn't have Relentless on the side, but these two do. There's all sorts of differences there. I believe this, Reflex's deck is the only one on Gamorrean Guards, Cunning Recruit. But yeah, you know, there's all sorts of really interesting decks that you can play, and it's a solid all around deck. It is pretty expensive because you have to have Vaders and Bobas, and Cunnings too. I guess are pretty expensive if you want to play those, but you don't have to. Yeah, it's a great all around deck. It has good matchups to aggro. It can do well against control decks. It's a good all around pick. So our next deck is Sabine, which is the aggro deck, and the green version of her is pretty much dominant. There are like a couple other versions that do get play, but and they function basically the same. But the green version, people tend to favor it because of the utility you get from Energy Conversion Lab and cards like Rebel Assault that are You can run them in the other versions, but they're not quite as good. And so the biggest innovation I think has been the addition of R2 as like a 1-drop. That can get a lot of value. You can pump it with things. You can bounce it with Bright Hope if you're pulling that in from the side deck. But yeah, I mean, basically you're playing a bunch of cheap cards and you're using things like For a Cause I Believe In to win in the late game. And you've got, units like K2. Some people are, especially in the green list, are playing like Steadfast Battalion, sometimes Ewing Reinforcement, sometimes Guerrilla Attack Pod. So you can go higher than this. But yeah, I mean, that's the core of the deck, is basically just go face, do as much damage as you can. Here's some lists. Here we have it says First Place Dark City games. I think they split in the cut, or no, this was, I think, the event where they just didn't do a top cut, and it was only Swiss, but I don't think they split, or I'm not sure. But First Place, this list did very well. Here we have this one won a 1K, and this one came top 4 in the 5K in Orlando. So these are all like very good lists. You can see there's like lots of differences, but a lot of the core stuff is the same. Like you're pretty much running like Battlefield Marine, Sabine, Green Squadron, A-Wing. Some people are on, I think, are all these, no, this list over here isn't on Robo Pathfinder, but some of them are. You got Steadfast Battalions here. You got, this list has Guerrilla Attack Pod, so does this list, but this list doesn't from the 5K. 5K player is also the only one on Zeb in the sideboard, which is great for the mirror. Ewing Reinforcement, I think, yeah, this one's maining them. These two are siding them. This deck has 1 Rebel Assault in the main, 1 in the side. This deck has 3 in the main. This one has 2 in the main, 1 in the side. So there's lots of variations you can do. But like, I mean, you can look at this and see the core is the same. And here I also have some lists for alternative ways to build Sabine. Yellow, and then this one red. So this one, a Win-A-Box tournament by tower number 9. And here, this one is from top, I believe this made top 8 of the 5K, and this is from the top 16 of the TTI League. And so you can see they're running the same pretty much red core, but they've got yellow cards like Leia, Surprise Strike. This one's on Spark Rebellion main. Millennium Falcon is the other big one. Greedo, and then this red one you get to run Aggression. You get to run I don't think it's running any. He's got Saws on the sideboard, but I don't think he's in Rallying Cry. But the big thing that the tower number 9 is emphasized is that Target Town is a really good base for this deck, and it lets you do a lot of cool things with aggro. So watch his video about that. But yeah, and so our next deck is this blue-green control deck. I have Iden here, but Krennic, like I said, it works pretty much the same. And basically what you're doing is you're trying to ramp, and you're trying to play removal lands like Vigilance. Vigilance has probably been the main innovation on this deck in the past month. People have just started to realize like how good it is. And then you're playing bigger stuff on the top end like Avengers. Different lists are running different things in the main versus the side. That's what you're doing is you're playing control. You're trying to stay alive as long as you can, and then play big things. And it works great. It works. In my opinion, it has good matchups into both Boba and Sabine. But yeah, so here are some lists. This one down in the corner is my list from that was top 8 at the 12 person Tacoma 1K. It's not a very good list, but I wanted to share it because it's mine. Like see, I'm only running 1 Vader. That's because I only had 1 at the time. And so a couple other collection limitations in there, but if you want like real lists, you can see this was from, I believe, this item list in the corner split. He was part of a split for a top 8 of an event, I believe, or top 4 maybe. And then this up here, I don't believe it's been played. It's not from a particular event, but it's the KTOD list by Maddie, who's been working on this list a lot. So yeah, just all around good stuff. You can see like sort of differences. Like Maddie's list has got 2 Devastator in the sideboard. This list over here is just split, or no, it's just 1 in the main with none on the sideboard. My list is split 1-on-1 between main and side. These two are both running 3 Vader, which is correct. I was only running 1. But yeah, like a lot of the cores are the same, like 3 Super Laser, 3 Resupply, 3 Barrage, pretty much the core of it. I think, yeah, these 2 lists are actually running the same profile of 2 drops. My profile is slightly different. So yeah, you can play around with stuff. There's lots of variation. There's lots of different things that could come in these lists. Some of them have started running restock in the sideboard to deal with the mirror primarily. So there's that, and these are like different versions of the deck with Krennic. These I'm not sure. This one comes from Take the Initiative League. This one comes from the Atlanta 1K. I'm actually not sure where this one came from, but it was a big tournament. I think I got it off the Garbage Roller site. I don't remember what tournament it was from. I just grabbed the list, but it was from a real tournament. It's not just a random list. And yeah, you can see like a lot of the same differences. People are running pretty much some of the same cards between them. These lists tend to play Skypipe Pursuer more. I'm not convinced that's correct, but they're in there. Theoretically, it works with Krennic better, but yeah. So then we have like the new hotness, and this is sort of explaining a lot of the trends in the meta, I think. So we have like these bigger control decks than the Iden and the Krennic, and that's Vader and Palpatine. Vader was sort of like always there. He's mostly in green now. Like a lot of people are starting to play him in blue. And that deck is actually the one that won the big 5K in Orlando. Palpatine almost exclusively with blue, but some other decks. Then there's like blue-green hero, which Luke is primarily the thing there, but Chewbacca also gets played. And then there's Han, primarily with green, which won our recent online league. Some people have also been playing with red or blue, but like these are sort of like the new decks that have always been around, but have really sort of come into the prominence in the past month. And so these like Vader and Palpatine decks have a really good matchup into the Iden and Krennic decks, which sort of allows, but they have a really bad matchup into Sabine, which sort of allows Sabine to sort of creep back in and take these decks out. It's great. There's lots of room for different kinds of decks to be played because every deck has a bad matchup that exists in the format. So let's take a look at Vader. Like I said, the blue version has become more dominant. It's you can also see this deck running with Iden instead of Vader, and they function pretty much the same. But the Iden decks haven't done very well at events, and the Vader ones have. So I chose Vader as a representative here. But yeah, basically you're playing things like Entrenched, and then a bunch of removal events. Not many units. You have a couple in there. Childson is just a really strong unit that can come out as like a 5/5 or even a 6/6 Sentinel, which is a really good, it's just a really hard unit to remove. And then you have big top end stuff like Super Laser Blast, Palpatine, and Avenger. Yeah, I mean it's a big control deck. Here are some lists. So this is up here in the corner in the top is the list that won the 5K in Orlando. He's got some interesting choices. Like he's got a main deck restock for I guess control mirrors. He's got I Am Your Father, which is interesting. He's got the 3 main deck vigilance, and then 2 Palpatine, 3 Avenger, 3 Super Laser Blast main deck. This is George the Hulk, which was top. It was either 8 or 16 at the 1K. And I also have put this green one, which is also either top 8 or 16. One of these was top 8. One of them was top 16. I honestly can't remember which. But yeah, you can see like this blue deck is running a lot of the same core. Like you got your Child Sons, you got a couple other units, removal events, and the top end is pretty similar. This green deck runs, I mean, you're running 2 Devastators in the main. He's also got 2 Relentless in the side. It's a more like classical style of Vader, which has sort of existed since launch. Yeah, where you're basically just trying to ramp and use Vader and big stuff in the late game. These decks are very much control-y. And like I said, you can play Iden. You can pretty much swap out Iden with Vader and get pretty much the same list. Like obviously you're gonna have to cut your Vader sabers from the sideboard, but I don't know how often those are coming in anyway. So yeah, like this is very much a real deck now. This Vader blue deck. It's something you should be concerned about. Sorry. So next deck is Palpatine, which occupies a similar spot to Vader, and that it is basically a hyper control deck that can go really big with Palpatine as a really strong unit that comes out in turn. Well, I guess he can come out in many different turns, but on 8 resources. And so this deck gets advantage of being able to play Emperor's Rail Guards at a 3/5, potentially a 3/5 Sentinel if you have an official out, like Regional Governor. Some people are running Piet, some people are running Yularen. And yeah, you're basically playing a long, grindy game until you can get some really good value out of Palpatine. And it has a bad matchup into aggro decks, but it has a good matchup into a lot of other things. So here's this list at the top was top 16 at the 5K. This down here is a list by a good player that I don't believe has any tournament finishes, but it's a good list by Wu, who's been working a lot in this deck. And he has a video on his channel that really goes in depth into this Palpatine deck. But as you can see, his list is not running Vigilance. I believe his current list is on Vigilance, but this one wasn't, that was published on the DB a while ago. But this one is, that made top at the 5K. He's on one Super Laser Blast in the main, one on the side, which is interesting. I believe the Wu list is not on Super Laser Blast at all, so you don't necessarily have to play that. 3 Vaders though, pretty standard, and just like interesting lower units. The list at the top is on Entrenched in the main, I believe. Yeah, Wu just had it in the sideboard. So yeah. I've also included this red list, which came second at a 1K in Pennsylvania. Just if you wanted to look at that also. You get some interesting red stuff, like you get the Palpatine unit, which is a really, really good ACOS unit. You get Ruthless Raider, Fallen Lightsaber, just some more value stuff. And I think it plays pretty similarly, but you don't have as many control events. But you do have some. But there are advantages playing the red one if you want to take a look at that list also. Then we have this blue-green hero deck, which is sort of mid-range, sort of control. And you can play it with Luke or Chewie. Luke is the one that finished top 4 at the 5K, so I've used him as a representative here. But the Chewie deck plays similarly. And so basically you can use stuff like Alliance Dispatcher to ramp really early. You use Bright Hope, Home 1, Mon Mothma as part of like a resource loop. You can basically get utility events out of the discard pile over and over again, like Akbar, like I said, Mon Mothma, Battlefield Marine. And you can just loop these over and over again. You have Rogue Squadron Skirmisher also, which can do similar things. And then you have like big top end like Luke Skywalker, Home 1, Redemption, U-Wing Reinforcement, and then Obi-Wan is sort of top end, but yeah. And then this deck is also running the 30 health base usually. There are builds that run ECL, but not all of them. So here are a couple lists. This is the top 4 deck from the 5K, and he's on some interesting choices. Like he's only on 1 Redemption between main and sideboard, which some people say you should run more because it's a great card in a lot of situations. He's also on main deck Devotion, which is a really, really interesting tech. He's only got 1 Akbar. He's got 2 Yodas. So some interesting choices that maybe not everyone agrees with, but he did well with them. This deck down here is running Energy Conversion Lab with it, and this is just by Thork, who's a very good player. It's not, again, this deck doesn't, I don't believe it has like tournament finishes, this list specifically anyway, but it's a good list by a good player if you want to check it out and build it for yourself. And this is from back in March, but it's it was the top 8 at a big Polish tournament with Chewie, and it like I said, it works pretty much the same as the Luke deck, obviously with some differences. You're playing more for Chewie in the late games. You got like stuff like Electro Staff in there, which is great with Chewie. But yeah, overall like very similar lists. And then this is Han, and Han won our recent league, and it was Thork playing it. Thork has been doing a lot of work on it. He has a great video breaking down his tournament run and the lists and the updates that he's made to it on his channel, so go take a look at that if you can. So this deck, I mean, it has a lot of the same green engine. Like you have the same resource loop with Mon Mothma, Bright Hope, Home 1, Akbar, all that. But you also just have some really explosive plays that you can do with Han to play things like the Han unit or U-Wing Reinforcement really early on in the game. Get to things like Home 1 faster. And it's kind of aggressive, but it can also play really long games. More so than like you would expect most aggressive decks to be able to do. It's a really good all around like utility deck, and it's also running the 30 health base usually. I don't think as many people are doing ECL with this deck, even as like the Luke deck. So yeah, let's take a look at these lists. So this is Thork's list that he won the the TTI League with. This is Jonah Nicholas's list, which came top 4 in the same league, and this is like a red version of the deck that was top 16 at the PPG 5K in Orlando. So, and this is like a more aggressive list that you're running things like K2, Red 3. It looks like he's not on 4Ks, I believe in, but it's it's aggression and you're doing more aggressive stuff. But the green version is really very different, but this is like a Han deck that I want to include here. So like Thork's deck, he's got 2 Vanguard Ace in there. The Jonah deck list only has 1, but this is a really great card to pull off of Ewing Reinforcement, because if you play 2 other cards with it, it becomes a 4/4 for 2, basically, because it counts the other 2 cards that you played with the Ewing Reinforcement and the Ewing Reinforcement itself. So it's great all around. And then you got your set of low cost units: Echo Base Defender, Akbar, Leia, Mon Mothma, Battlefield Marine that you can pull back with Home One. Also Millennium Falcon. But that's Usually more of an aggressive card that you're playing. Lots of good top end that you can play, like Han Solo, Home One. Jonah Nicholas has an overwhelming barrage on the side. They both have reinforcement walkers on the side for more top end. That's more aggro friendly, because you can play it and get the heal immediately. So yeah, it's just, if you want like a really unique deck that doesn't fit into like the neatly defined categories of aggro control mid range, then this might be the deck for you. And these are like decks that I've called like on the outside looking in. Some of these have done very well at tournaments in the past or recently, but they're not like considered to be like top tier. And then these are like the rogue decks I put Tarkin, Thrawn, and I put like Palpatine. This is mainly like for like the yellow version of Palpatine. And then I put IG-88 to just represent like everything else that isn't on here, like Cassian, Hera, Jin. These would all go in the IG-88 category. So here are some lists. This is Poem's list from the top 16 of our league. Poem has been a great innovator with this deck. He actually finished second in the previous season of the TTI League with a similar list. I don't believe it was the exact same, but this is, it's Mono Boba. It does what it does. You've got things like Cunning, which are, Cunning answers like 3 units at the same time, which is great. It's a really good all-around utility card, especially for 4. Cantina Bouncer is a really strong unit for 5. And Bodhi's a great unit for 3. It's yellow is one of the only aspects, if not the only aspect probably, that you can run like all 3 of the double aspect cards in a double aspect deck, and it works really well. This is it says IRL Churret, but it's actually from an online tournament from the TTI League. Tower number 9 made top 8 with this list, with Churret, and it's got Force Throw is just a really good all-around card if you can get it off. Jedi Lightsaber, he's on main decked Fang Fighters to protect units with from getting traitorous while they have a lightsaber on them. And then you're also playing good top end like Luke and Redemption. This is Grand Inquisitor. So this came second at our recent TTI League. And it's actually a really good deck. Like, you can go back and watch some of the videos. It beats he beat 2 of the best Boba players in the world with this deck. And it's just, it can combo off and do all sorts of crazy things. It can go into the long game because you have things like Vader and Palpatine. And yeah, it's just, you should watch videos on our channel of this deck getting played. It really, it does a lot. And it should not be, under appreciated, but it is. It's great. So next we have this Leia deck. Leia was on the original side of like outside looking in decks, but she's sort of been like surpassed by Sabine, but some people are trying to go back to her sometimes. This is a list from Envert, who won a case tournament in Kansas, I believe, or Kansas City, maybe not. I think Kansas City, Missouri. It's not Kansas City, Kansas. But yeah, so you get to run Tarkin Town, which some people have said is a favored base for aggro over Energy Conversion Lab or any of the 30 health bases. But you get to run basically the same core as the Sabine Green deck, so it's worth taking a look at if you want an alternative approach to aggro. This is a Thrawn deck from the top 16 of the TTI League. It put up an impressive showing against the Han deck that ended up winning the whole thing. That's a that's a great video if you want to go watch that on our channel. He's only got 1 vigilance in the main and 1 in the sideboard, which might be wrong. He's on Luke Skywalker out of aspect, which I think is really interesting. But it's, yeah, a lot of people say that the green or the red decks give you better control tools than the yellow. But you know, yellow villain control is something that you can play if you want, and Copycat decided to do it, and he did okay with it. This over here is a Han blue deck. It's another example of how to play Han, and you know, functions fairly similar to the green deck. You don't have home 1 or like the resource loop stuff with Bright Hope or resupply, but you do get to play like Redemption, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan, you know, things like that are just really, you know, good value pieces. So, and this is from a Cincinnati 1K. I believe what happened is they got to like top 4 and decided to split, and this was one of the decks that made it. So yeah, go forth and net deck. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it was a good breakdown of what the meta was, and I hope you learned from it. So always remember to take the initiative, and I'll see you guys later.